But the family of Austin Metcalf, the 17-year-old, they have been just sharing stories about what kind of a man he was and details about the final moments while he was here.
Yeah, I pushed my hand on there, trying to make it stop, and I grabbed his head and I looked in his eyes.
The Next Generation Action Network, since the past week, have gotten thousands of calls regarding this situation and making sure that our organization was involved in this situation because of the growing tension of racism and bigotry involving with the case.
Imagine showing up to a high school track meet focused on winning, and by the end of the day, you're in handcuffs, accused of murder, and possibly facing the death penalty. Well, that's exactly what happened to 17-year-old Karmelo Anthony after he fatally stabbed another student, Austin Metcalf, right there in the bleachers. And people instantly called for the harshest punishment possible. But now, the case has taken a turn, and the truth behind what really happened might not be as simple as it seems. Some say Karmelo was a cold-blooded killer. Others say it was self-defense, and that there's a whole lot more to the story than the internet's not seeing. So today we're gonna break it down. What went down at that track meet, what Karmelo actually said after the arrest, and why this case is blowing up online in a way that feels a little too familiar. Let's get into it. So let's start with what actually happened. It was April 2nd at Kai Kendall Stadium in Frisco, Texas. Multiple high schools were there for a track meet. Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf, both 17, got into some kind of disagreement. According to police, it started over something pretty small, a spot under a shaded tent that was set up for one of the teams. Metcalf apparently told Karmelo to move. Karmelo didn't. A witness says he told Metcalf, "Touch me and see what happens." Then Metcalf put hands on him, trying to move him, grab him, whatever. And that's when Karmelo reportedly reached into his backpack, pulled out a knife, and stabbed Metcalf in the chest. Austin collapsed. Trainers rushed over, and first responders tried CPR and tried everything they could, but it was too late. Austin was pronounced dead right there on the scene. Everything just happened so fast. In 1 second it was a school event, the next, someone's life was gone. And just like that, Karmelo's entire life changed also. But Karmelo didn't run far. Police found him very quickly, and when they did, he didn't deny anything. In fact, when the officers said that they had the alleged suspect, Karmelo straight up said, "I'm not alleged, I did it." He told police that Austin put his hands on him, even after he told him not to. He felt threatened and he reacted. But once he was in the police car, Karmelo asked two things. Is he going to be okay? Does this count as self-defense? Now say what you want about the situation, those questions just don't sound like someone who planned this out. They sound like a kid who panicked and is now trying to figure out how bad this really is. And that's exactly what Karmelo's lawyers are saying. They've been clear from the beginning that this wasn't planned, this wasn't red drum, this was self-defense. But by then the headlines had already taken off and people online had already made up their minds. But here's where things get messy. People close to Karmelo, including some folks online, say the situation wasn't random. They say Karmelo had been bullied, possibly even by Austin Metcalf himself. And there's no official record confirming this just yet, but it's a big part of what Karmelo's side is claiming. Now from their perspective, Karmelo didn't walk into that track meet looking for a fight. He was just tired of being messed with. And when Metcalf got into his face and physically touched him, something inside Karmelo snapped. Now a lot of people are ignoring his side of the story, brushing it off like it doesn't matter. But if this bullying turns out to be true, that could change how the court looks at this whole case. It's not about saying what happened was okay, it's about understanding what might have pushed Karmelo over the edge. Because no one just randomly stabs someone over a seat under a tent. There's always more to it, and this might be the part the internet is not ready to hear. If you've been on Twitter lately, you already know this case isn't just a legal battle. It's a full-on social media war. Right now, there are two sides going at it, and it's getting ugly. On one side, you've got people calling Karmelo a thug who targeted a white child at school. And some are even acting like he planned the whole thing, trying to take out a so-called rising star. And on the flip side, others are saying Austin was racist, maybe even a white supremacist, and that Karmelo was defending himself after being pushed way too far. One user summed it up like this. This case is a tragedy for both parties, but social media made it worse. One side's calling Karmelo a thug, the other says Austin was a racist. None of it's confirmed, it's just internet chaos. And they're definitely not wrong, because people are online treating this like a game of sides, when in reality, two families are going through hell. Until this thing gets to trial, and we actually hear the evidence, all this online noise is just that, noise. But sadly, the noise is shaping how people think, and that's the scariest part. But let's be real a second. For a millisecond, if Karmelo wasn't black, would people still be calling him a thug? Would Twitter be so quick to say he planned it all out? Race has been a huge part of this conversation from the start, and whether folks want to admit it or not. But some people have pointed out that stories like this don't just always go viral. But when a black teen stabs a white teen, suddenly everybody's paying attention. And not just attention, assumptions. People start creating narratives. Karmelo must be dangerous. Austin must have been an angel. But none of us really know who either of these kids were. The truth probably is more complicated than the tweets make it seem, and there's pain on both sides here. A child is gone. Another kid is facing prison, and the people online acting like it's black and white, it's not. It's definitely gray, it's definitely layered, it's real. And we won't know the full picture until the facts come out in court and not on social media. But while the internet was exploding with hot takes and hate, Karmelo's uncle stepped forward to tell a whole different side of the story. According to him, Karmelo isn't some violent kid like people are making him out to be. He says his nephew had a 4.0 GPA, no criminal record, and was being looked at by multiple colleges. This wasn't some troublemaker looking for a fight, this was a child with a future. His uncle made it very clear this wasn't gang related, it wasn't premeditated, it was a tragic mistake. And honestly, that's important to hear because while people online are trying to turn Karmelo into a stereotype, his family is saying, no, he was just a smart kid who got pushed too far in a bad moment. And whether you believe that or not, it reminds us of something very simple. We don't know the full story yet, and maybe before we judge someone's entire life based on one headline, we should take a breath and listen to the people that actually know him. By now you're probably thinking though, okay, well what do the people who were there say? Well, that depends on who you ask. Witnesses told police a few different versions of what went down, and they don't all line up. Some say Karmelo warned Austin not to touch him, and Austin did anyway. Others say it didn't look like a big of a deal, and Karmelo might have overreacted. Some even claim that there were other people with Austin, possibly including his brother, which could change how threatening the situation felt for Karmelo. Bottom line, there's no one clear version of the events that everybody agrees on, and that's a big deal of it, especially when someone's life is on the line in court. But as if this case wasn't already confusing enough, things got even worse when fake accounts started spreading lies right after the stabbing. One account, pretending to be the chief of police, started pushing a story that Metcalf had sucker punched Karmelo and smashed his phone into the bleachers. That sounds dramatic, right? But the problem is, none of that was confirmed by police. The Frisco PD had to make a public post warning people that they were fake accounts and that all the real updates would only come from their verified page. But by that point, the damage was already done. The tweets had gone viral. People started repeating the fake story like it was fact, and just like that, social media made the situation even harder to understand. But let's break down the big question. Was Karmelo defending himself? A lot of people think self-defense only counts if you're being attacked with a weapon. But in Texas, the law actually gives you a lot of room to protect yourself, especially if someone puts their hands on you first. According to the law, if you're not the one who started the fight and you reasonably believe you're in danger, you're allowed to use force. And if you're in a place you're legally allowed to be, like a public school track meet, you're not required to run away. So if Karmelo really was touched, grabbed, or surrounded in a way that made him feel threatened, the law says he might have had the right to defend himself, even with a knife. Now, was that the smartest move? Probably not, but legally it might have been justified depending on what the jury believes. That's what Karmelo's lawyers are pushing in this self-defense angle. I mean, real hard too, because if the court sees him as a child who reacted to a threat instead of someone who planned an attack, it changes everything. If Karmelo truly believed that he was facing multiple people and that they could seriously hurt him, then using deadly force might be considered reasonable. And remember, it's not just about what happened, it's about what he believed was about to happen. And that's what the self-defense is built on, perception and fear in the high-stress moments. So while people might say he overreacted, the court will be asking, was it reasonable for him to think his safety was at risk? And here's something a lot of former athletes are pointing out, and it's honestly kind of shady. The whole fight supposedly started over a tent at the track meet, but people who've actually been to these events say that doesn't add up. The tents aren't some exclusive VIP area, they're open, shared sunshades, no walls, no gates. People from all different schools mix and chill under them all day. So why was Austin telling Karmelo to move? And why was it even a problem? And here's where it gets even weirder. Some reports say that Austin wasn't even on the track team. So why was he pressing someone to leave? Was this about a tent or something else entirely? And that's what makes people think that there has been some more personal beef or clique drama. And it wasn't just about a seat, it could have been the result of built-up attitude or straight-up targeting. People at the event definitely know more than what's being shared, and until we hear from them in court, we're all just trying to piece it together. Well, Karmelo's legal team isn't staying quiet. They've been speaking up about it from day one, and their message is simple. Don't rush to judgment, wait for the facts. They're arguing that this whole thing started because Karmelo was being harassed and physically threatened. And in Texas, if you're not the one who starts the fight and you genuinely think you're in danger, you're legally allowed to protect yourself. So they've also asked the court to reduce his bond, which was currently sitting at $1 million. That's a lot of money. And while people might argue he's a flight risk, the defense says he's a high-achieving student with no criminal history, a clean record, and a family that's been under serious pressure, including death threats, ever since this arrest.
Monday morning in a courtroom, they hope to convince a judge that the 17-year-old who was accused of fatally stabbing another student during a track meet last week is entitled to a reduction of his current $1 million bond.
But before we wrap, we have to talk about Austin, because no matter where you stand, this was still a life lost. Friends say he was athletic, friendly, and involved in his community. He was 17 just like Karmelo and still figuring life out. A lot of people described him as someone who liked to compete and had big goals for his future. The tributes that poured in after his death were emotional, heartfelt, and full of love from people who truly cared about him. So as much as this case has turned into a legal circus online, with people choosing sides and throwing labels, it's important to stop and remember, 2 families were torn apart that day. Austin's family lost a whole son, and Karmelo's family might lose one too, just in a different way. This case doesn't have to be about picking sides. It can be about recognizing the weight of what happened and hoping that the truth gets told the right way. But what's your take on this case? Was it self-defense or something deeper? Drop your thoughts and comments below. Keep it respectful though. Smash that like button. Subscribe for more real breakdowns like this, because the trial's coming and you won't want to miss how this ends.